What if your city could draft a policy, benchmark best practices from across the country, and forecast financial impacts all before lunch? Sounds like science fiction, right? It's not. It's the power of generative AI, and it's already transforming how local governments operate. On this episode of Gov360, we're joined by one of the leading voices helping local agencies do just that. Micah Gaudet, Deputy City Manager of Maricopa, Arizona, and the force behind civicinnovation.ai. He's training public sector professionals nationwide on how to use AI to drive efficiency, insight, and better service delivery. If you've ever wondered how to responsibly harness AI in your agency, or if you're just AI curious, this is the episode for you. Welcome to Gov360, your full circle view on local government. Today, we're tackling a topic that's no longer just on the horizon, it's already reshaping how cities operate: artificial intelligence in local government. From policy research to permit processing, AI is rapidly moving from novelty to necessity. And for smaller and mid-sized agencies without large research teams or deep benches, AI tools can level the playing field, saving time, money, and staff capacity. But with all the hype surrounding generative AI, it can be hard to separate what's practical from what's premature. What actually works? What should you be cautious of? And how do you build internal buy-in and confidence to use these tools responsibly? Our guest today has been answering these questions in real time in real organizations. Micah Gaudet is the Deputy City Manager in Maricopa, Arizona, and one of the most respected voices in the country when it comes to applying AI in the public sector. He's also the COO of the American Association of Municipal Executives and is the creator of civicinnovation.ai, where he trains government professionals on how to use tools like ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Google Gemini to drive real outcomes. Most recently, Micah published the book 1001 Prompts for Unlocking Generative AI in Local Government. Whether you're already experimenting with AI or just starting to explore what's possible, Micah brings the kind of grounded, real-world insight every local government leader needs to hear. Micah, welcome to Gov360. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Chris. My pleasure. Glad to be on this podcast.
Yeah. So, I like to just jump right in, and I want to get into your background here in a little bit because it's very interesting. But AI is a little bit of a controversial topic. And you've put yourself out there as someone who has really gone, headfirst into AI and applied it to local government. And you're one of the first to really do that and put yourself out there on the topic. How did you initially get interested in AI?
Chris, I heard about AI, listening to a podcast, right? That's why I like to listen to podcasts like this one. And it was just a regular news podcast. And the guy was talking about ChatGPT. So I thought, that's kind of cool. And I really started using it to write dad jokes for my kid. And that's basically what I was doing with it right away. Nothing productive. And it's probably my wife that wanted me to be more productive with it and led me away from the dad jokes. I think she got tired of it too. And really, the start with local government was just kind of gradual, right? Started using dad jokes. That's kind of cool. Let's see what I can do at work with it. Let's see if I can have it write an email or stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And then I remember I was in Kansas City at a conference, and I was talking to Joe Turner, friend of the show here, and he was saying, "Hey, you should do a training on AI for city managers." I was like, "Joe, first off, I don't know anything about AI. I have no idea what it means to be a city manager. I'm just barely figuring this piece out too. Like, who's going to listen to some knucklehead from Arizona talk about AI?" And so he pressed me like, "Hey, you need to do it. You should do it." And I was like, "Okay, I'll do it just to prove you wrong and to prove that no one wants to listen to me, and then I don't have to hear about it again." And so I did it as a LinkedIn Live event, which was probably the worst possible platform to do a live event, 2.5 years ago. And Chris,
right? I've never tried it.
It was, yeah. They did a lot of work since then. LinkedIn's, I got to give them credit. They did a lot of work since then, but back then it was not a popular platform for live events. But Chris, I had like 200 people show up at this LinkedIn Live event.
Wow!
It just blew me away. And so that's kind of where, like, okay, there's something here. There's an appetite, there's a desire to learn about AI, and just to be educated about what it is and how to use it in local government. So that's kind of how I got things going. And I joke with people that I am not the technical guy, My version of typing the keyboard is the Columbus method, where I find a key and land on it, and that's kind of how that's
I like
my
that. That's good. That's good.
that's my technical expertise. And so I'm more focused on how we can deploy it, how we can use it in practical ways, and less about the ins and outs of what a large language model, what neural networks are. There are guys who are much smarter than me that can talk about stuff like that.
So you're working as deputy city manager in Maricopa, Arizona. Were you in that position at the time where you started experimenting with AI?
Yes, yeah, that's when I first started, because I've been in that DCM role now for about 3 years now. So
Okay.
I was there a little bit before ChatGPT first came out, and
And
then just started playing with it.
how did you first start utilizing AI in your day job at the city, and what was that like? And did you have to go to your city manager and say, "Hey, I want to start implementing some of this within the organization"? And was there trepidation there? Or, did you face any pushback or concerns initially?
No, and honestly, Chris, I'm trying to think. I don't remember what I first started using it on. It's probably like writing emails or changing the tone or something like that. It's probably what it was. I had a brief conversation with our city attorney just to make sure I wasn't doing anything that run afoul of like open records requests or things like that, and
Right.
just listen to our attorney's advice. And really, it's a matter of just of trust, right? So I can explain kind of how I introduced AI to the rest of my team and in my departments in public safety, which I oversee. I simply, and one of my one-on-ones with the fire chief and with the police chief, I said, hey, here's this really cool tool. I want to show you what this looks like and what it can do. I think you get a lot of use out of it. If you want to use it, cool. If not, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't need to tell them anything about hallucinations. I didn't need to tell them anything about, be careful. Because at the end of the day, if I can't trust a police chief to use a tool like ChatGPT, I probably have a lot bigger issues at play there. But
That's
the thing is,
true.
but he's a great police chief. I have a phenomenal fire chief as well. And I can trust him to know, hey, if it's going to give you information, to trust but verify, to not believe everything you see on a computer screen, just like you do for anything else.
Right. So, Micah, for those who are listening who may not be as familiar with AI, probably at this point, it would be hard to find someone who has not heard of AI. But maybe just let's go over what exactly AI is, and what does this term generative AI mean?
Yeah. So AI, broadly speaking, has been around for a long, long time, right? It's been around for 50 plus years. This concept of AI, or artificial intelligence, right? The kind of the self-thinking ability that it has. Generative, basically, what it does is, I like to think of it in terms of like a conversation where you and I are talking right now, and we're generating words. And when I say something, you're responding back to me based on what I say to you. Or if you can think of this with artwork as well too. If I were to go to an artist and say, "Hey, can you draw a picture of a mountain landscape?" Then they would draw the picture of a mountain landscape. And the more detailed I could be in describing to the artist what I want him or her to do, the more the artwork's going to match more what I have in my head. And so that's really what generative AI is. It's generating content, whether it be anything from music, from songs, to written content, to videos, to artwork, or anything in between there. The kind of the sky's the limit.
Right. And draw a comparison between what AI is doing versus a search engine.
Yeah, so the AI is, from my understanding of it, and you're testing my technical expertise right here, Chris. Like I said, I drive the car. I don't change the oil. But my understanding of it, and again, people are a lot smarter can probably explain this way better than I can. My understanding of it is that a search engine is going to go and find information or web pages that's ranked according to kind of who has paid the most money, in a way, in terms of like a Google search engine, or what keywords they put in there to get to the top of that ranking. Not many of us have been to page 25 of a Google search, but
Right.
those pages are out there. Where AI is taking all of the information that's out there and generating a response based on what it thinks you're looking to understand, right? So if I say write a budget letter, it's going to take all of its training, all the knowledge it has across really the entirety of published content on the internet, and say, okay, here's all the examples of budget letters. So this is kind of the template I need to do, and then it generates a budget letter for me.
Yeah. What about reliability? Because you mentioned the term hallucination. I understand what that means, but maybe let's talk about that a little bit because you do have to be careful. I mean, you have to check the work, in other words, right?
Yeah, and I would say the same thing as if you have an intern and it's writing something for you or doing a project for you, you're going to want to check that work, right? Because you want to make sure that before you bring something to council or something like that, that you've checked the work of staff or of an intern. So you kind of think of ChatGPT as a super intelligent college intern.
In local government, what are some of the major applications that you've seen and that you've used? I mean, I think research is one thing, but one of the things that excites me is the ability to to produce documents or policies that in the past would take weeks to put together and to generate that really in a matter of minutes. I'm thinking of, HR policies,
Yep.
any number of types of policies that you could generate. Now, of course, you'll want to still, run that by legal and your HR department, but the ability to create in a short period of time documents that would take days or weeks in the past is a tremendous opportunity.
Yeah, it's a game changer. It really is, Chris. It's been amazing how quickly we can find information, and not only the quickness of the information, but also the quality of it as well too. And you think about the typical way that cities put together policies. What do? We're looking for a new policy. We send a listserv email to all of our friends and ask them, "Hey, do you have a policy on this?" And then they send them back, and we create what I call the Frankenstein policy, right? It's bits and pieces of each individual one that like things that make sense for our context and things like that. And we put that together. And we're really at the mercy of whether or not people are responding to us or not responding to us. Well, now with AI, we don't have to wait for that. I can go out and find those policies on my own in seconds instead of waiting days for an email response. So you're 100% right in the policy example. And what I think AI is doing, the reason why I'm excited about AI specifically within my team is, like I mentioned, I can trust my police and fire chief to use AI because they're competent individuals. At the same time, because they are competent individuals, I don't want them spending their time putting numbers into an Excel formula, into an Excel spreadsheet, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want them having to spend time, looking at or trying to find different policies and reading hundreds of pages of documents because their brains are better spent in other areas. They're smart, capable individuals that we hire. And so I want them to be able to bring their full human intelligence to work every day. And that's what makes me most excited about AI. And I guess where the real benefit is of AI in local government is staff bringing their full human intelligence to work every single day.
Yeah, I think that brings up a topic that I think a lot of people are concerned about, which is AI gonna replace my job, right? And I heard this at a conference, and it stuck with me. I don't know where it originated, so I can't give proper credit, but it was you're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to someone who knows how to use AI, right?
Yeah.
There's still a needed human element there, but it can make you, many times more efficient at your job.
Yeah. And I would say, Chris, let me give an example here. So back in 1987, Microsoft Word came out, right? The first word processor came out.
Mm-hmm.
And that piece of technology, that piece of software has changed our hiring processes and practices in local government, right? So you could have the absolute best candidate for an assistant to the city manager position you might be hiring there. They could be a stellar candidate, have the right attitude, they're a hard worker, they have all the requisite skills, but if they don't know how to use Microsoft Word, you're probably not going to hire them. And in fact, you're probably not going to give them an interview. So in a relatively short amount of time, a piece of technology has changed how we hire people in America and in local government in America. And the same holds true for the business sector as well, too. So while I would love to sit here and say, oh, yeah, AI won't replace your job, you're fine, just learn AI and be fine. The reality is it might. And I think there is a shift in the labor force that's coming. This is a type of industrial revolution, if you will, that's going to shift how work is being done. And it's up to us as local government leaders, especially those of us in executive positions with positions of high trust and confidence, where trust is to lead them in the right way, to develop them in the skills that are necessary for a AI world.
So where do you see those shifts happening specifically within local government? So let's take, public works department. You're still going to need people out there filling potholes, right? So
Yeah.
maybe not so much there, but then you look at an analyst position, right? Well,
Yep.
maybe you don't need as many analysts because AI is making research and report writing much more efficient, right?
Yeah, it's a good example of things like analyst skills. There's a lot of, I'm not saying this is necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. Each city has to kind of determine their own trajectory, but there's a lot of AI tools out there that can do call processing and voice-based AI. The different, if you ever called into a credit card company recently, you're probably talking to an AI bot. And we've complained about that. It's been around for quite a while. Now they're just really, really good. And it's hard to distinguish between a person and a bot. But
Right.
Stuff like that, the customer service type of stuff, things like permit processing to some degree can also be automated through AI and things like that. You're always going to need something. And I think the key with using AI is to balance between efficiency, which can be a good thing at times, depending what you're being efficient in, as well as that customer service and those human touch points for local residents and guests.
For those who haven't delved into AI yet, I guess I want to talk about barriers to entry. How easy or difficult is it to make that jump? And I think it's probably much easier than a lot of people fear, right? But secondly, there is a lot of fear and trepidation about the dangers of AI, and I'd like to touch on that as well. But let's start with the first part of that. One of the things I've heard you say on other podcasts is just start doing it, just start using it. You learn to drive, just start driving the car, right?
Yeah.
And your book is phenomenal. By the way, I have the book right here.
Thank you.
I mean, it's just I ordered this book and I thought, oh man, because I've dabbled with ChatGPT. I use it quite a bit to check my work and to help come up with outlines and do research. But I've always just kind of assumed that I'm just scratching the surface and that there's much more to it. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna order Micah's book because it's specific nuts and bolts for local government. It has the specific prompts I can use. And I thought, this is going to be maybe not quite as complicated as coding, but there's probably very specific things you have to enter. And one of the things I loved about your book is that it really drove home that it's not rocket science. Like you said, you're having a conversation. And what I found is, while your book gave me some amazingly great ideas that I'm going to definitely use in my daily work now, it actually made me feel better about myself because I'm doing a lot of this already. And I haven't been using ChatGPT all that long, really. So I guess one of the things that I really want to encourage people to do is just jump in and start doing it. And it's really not all that difficult, is it?
I wholeheartedly agree. I get asked a lot, what's the best AI tool out there? And my response is typically the best AI tool is the one you're going to use.
Right.
And the same thing for the prompts too. What's the best prompt? The best prompt is the one you hit enter on. That's the best prompt. Right. And part of it too is understanding how conversational AI works, right? So if you and I are having a conversation, we didn't finish this podcast on sentence number 1, right? We're on sentence number 50 or whatever we're at now, but it's a dialogue. And so your second and third sentences with the conversational model are just as important as the first one. So don't get hung up on that first prompt. Just go and have fun.
That's so true because it's very conversational. Many times I've put in a prompt and I've asked a question, I've gotten the answer back, and I thought, that's not exactly what I was looking for, or like, are you sure? So I would probe a little bit further and ask a follow-up question, and it would come back and say, oh, that's a great question, and I'm glad you gave me that additional information, and it changed the output, changed the response, and then you just kind of continue down that path and until you end up with the information that you're looking for.
100%. I think that's a really good approach to doing things, is to continue to press, continue to check. And that's also helpful too, to make sure it's not hallucinating, make sure it's giving you the relevant information that you need to achieve from that conversation.
It's funny you mentioned hallucinating because recently I was using ChatGPT for some research, and it spit out an answer. And I thought, did it take into account these resource materials, right? Did it, so I flat out asked it. I said, were you able to access, the materials at these links? And it came back and it said, no, actually, I wasn't able to access it. So it essentially made up the answer and admitted to it, So,
yeah.
so, okay. Well, all right. So now I went to those links myself. I printed them, I saved them as PDFs, and then I attached the PDF into ChatGPT, and it completely changed the response.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to double check. Like, did you actually read this? And again, you think of this in the same way as if it's a staffer, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many times have we given something, someone a task to do, maybe give them some documents to read over, they come back and they're like, did you actually read what I gave you? No, I didn't actually. Yeah, that happens in real world too. So it's nothing unique or different with AI. It's just, they're just faster. That's about it.
So give me some examples of types of things you've used AI for in your work. I mean, what certain types of documents or in certain departments, or what are some of the most useful ways that people in local government can utilize AI?
Yeah, I like using a lot for we in our annual budget process. We do what we call business cases, right? So when a proposal is made for annual budget, the department will put together kind of a justification for the item they're looking to acquire through the budget process, in addition to what they're already allocated budget-wise. Mm-hmm. I love using AI to be able to kind of do a checks and balances on that, right? For me, I've never worked a day in the fire department, never worked a day in the police department, but I'm, entrusted with serving them in my position as a deputy city manager. So sometimes things get lost in translation. So I remember one time my fire chief wanted to purchase NFPA compliant ticks. And I was thinking to myself, man, last time I heard of a tick, I was out in the woods in Wisconsin where I grew up. And those are things I didn't want to purchase. I don't know why we're buying these things and what makes them NFPA compliant. But what I was able to do is use a tool like Perplexity and say, okay, what is an NFPA compliant tick? Okay, it's a thermal imaging camera. And then, okay, what's the average cost for an NFPA compliant tick? And then I can see, okay, here's the average cost of a NFPA compliant tick. And I know that when I get that budget request come across my desk, if it says it's $200, we're probably getting a wool pull over our eyes. If it's $20,000, I'm probably getting a very bad deal. And so it's able to kind of ballpark some things like that. Other things I love doing is on just analyzing budget trends and doing things like that. I was showing our my public safety admin manager yesterday at work. I was showing him a little agent I created that was able to take our departmental budgets. I could sanitize it, just have like the account description and the numbers, and then throw it into this little AI agent and have it analyze trends over the pay periods to see how our budgets were doing, the line items, and what we're spending most money on. That way, on next year's fiscal year budget, we can say, hey, look, we really didn't spend a whole lot of money on office supplies this last year, but we were always getting near the top of our training budget. So instead of just asking for more training budget money, why don't we take some money from the office supplies line item and move that over to trainings? That way we can have a more, the money is going to where it's actually being used and being needed there. So just different things like that can be super, super helpful. I also use this sometimes, Chris, as just a sounding board, right? We all go through things in our work and challenges in our work. And it's helpful, especially on the drive home from work, when you have those thoughts racing through your head. I'll turn on the ChatGPT app on my phone, and I'll talk to you. We have a real-time conversation with it back and forth. I don't give details or names or stuff like that, but just to kind of describe the situation I'm dealing with and ask for, hey, give me some tips about how I could go about having this conversation with a coworker tomorrow, or give me some ideas of how I could approach this situation I have at work. And it gives me some feedback and say, okay, well, I was thinking this way. What do you think? I say, yes, no, here's why. And so it can be helpful that way as well.
I recently, it saved me on an HR issue. And one of the neat things that you can do is upload documents, right? So, I have our personnel rules upload it into ChatGPT, and when an issue comes up, I'll ask it, I'll explain the issue and have it take a look at personnel rules and let me know, which options I have, that are consistent with the rules, or if a violation of the rules has occurred, without having to sit there and read hundreds of pages, sift through the whole document to try to find the pertinent sections myself. It just really makes that process much more efficient.
It really does. Another thing too on the HR side of things, because our HR policies, when we're creating new policies, we're not always diligent to go back and make sure they don't conflict with previous policies. And so able to upload all of our policy documents and say, okay, tell me if anything conflicts, any language conflicts across the different policies, especially when you get into things like ADA compliance and FMLA and workers' compensation, supplemental benefits that we have here for public safety individuals, the sworn public safety folks in our city in Arizona, like these different complicated things that you have. It's easy to forget, like, oh man, I say it's something on this policy, it's the opposite thing, or it's not as clear of the policy over here. So to be able to see across the entire landscape all at once could be super helpful.
Here's a tip for city managers or aspiring city managers who are getting ready to apply for a job. What I like to do is plug in the job posting, and then I'll go online and I'll get the city's budget, and I'll do like the last 3 years of budgets. I'll put in the city's general plan. I'll put in the most recent 1 or 2 years of the financial reports, the audits, the ACFRs, and put all those documents in there. And then I'll ask ChatGPT, what are the major issues facing the city, right? Talk to me about the budget. What do you see any red flags in the budget? Do you see any room for improvement in the budget? What are the major challenges you're seeing in the budget, right? And just have a conversation and go back and forth, almost like I'm sitting across the table from the current or the former city manager and picking the guy's brain, right? And
that's brilliant, Chris. I love that. That's awesome.
I find it incredibly helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool.
So, Micah, talk to me a little about, ChatGPT, pretty much everyone knows about ChatGPT, but some of these others are not as well known. So you mentioned Perplexity. There's also, Google Gemini, Microsoft Copilot. What are the differences between all of these types of AI?
Really, it comes down to the models they're trained on. There's not a huge difference. And again, I'm focusing more on the user experience of these tools, right? ChatGPT has a phenomenal user experience design to it, not unlike Google, right? There's a reason why when you go to Google, you'll have the search bar you put in there. That looks very relatively similar to what you're seeing in AI models as well with the prompt box. And it's designed that way on purpose. So there's other tools out there too that do a great job. So for instance, Grok is a phenomenal deep research tool. It does a really good job at deep research. And right now,
what do you mean by deep research?
So deep research is a tool within ChatGPT and Gemini, these different conversational models like that, where you can give it a topic, and instead of just producing a result that's maybe a page long, it's going and finding information out for you. It's sourcing the information, and it can produce like a 20 to 50-page document of that topic, of diving deep into what that topic is.
And certain AI models do better or worse jobs of that. So, for example, I know in ChatGPT there is an option for that, right? And I think depending on the plan that you're on, I think the plan that I'm on, I get so many deep research searches, a month or whatever it is. But then you mentioned Grok, which I know is very popular. I haven't tried it out yet. Is one better at that deep research than the other?
I think Grok is really good. Grok is good because it has probably the most sources I've ever seen cited within a deep research paper, if you will, where ChatGPT will average 30 plus sources. Sometimes I see Grok with 100 plus sources in there. Wow. It's very in depth. They do a phenomenal job with it too.
Wow.
So it's more sourced. However, ChatGPT generates more content from the sources itself. So the content is longer. Perplexity is a deep research tool as well. I've not been all that impressed with it. It's not been something I would really use all that often. ChatGPT actually just did this feature, which is really cool, where when you're done with the deep research prompt and the output is there, there's a button you can click and it says export to PDF. So you can automatically export that thing to PDF. And then if you have if you're a Google organization, Google Gemini has a deep research thing, and then you can export that deep research directly to a Google Doc as well too.
Okay, so even within ChatGPT, there's different functions and options, right? Like like Wall-E, like what are those different? I don't know what they're called, modules or whatever the term is. That does ChatGPT automatically apply those, or do you have to actively use those features?
So there's some that are automatically applied. So the one you're referring to before, Dolly.
Dolly, yes.
Yes, yeah. Wall-E's the robot, which I totally understand why that would be, why that would make sense there too. And maybe it was.
I have a 4-year-old. Sorry.
Yep, makes total sense. And maybe they named it Dolly after Wall-E. Who knows? But that's an image generation one, and so you don't have to select that. When you say create an image, then it'll create the image for you of something you want to create. There's other tools in there too where you have to click it. You have to select like a deep research or the video generating tool called Sora that's in ChatGPT. You can click on Sora. Other tool as well is called Canvas, which when you're writing a document, you can actually, when you're writing something like an email or a policy or something like that, you generate in ChatGPT, you can either tell it or click on Canvas, open it in Canvas, and it'll open this thing up, and then you can edit right there within ChatGPT. So you can delete words, you can add words, you can do whatever you want to do. You can highlight stuff. So if it's bulletized, you can highlight the bulletized part and say, hey, ChatGPT, make this paragraphs instead of bullets, or whatever you want to do to change the tone, the wording. You can do all that right there in Canvas. Just super, super awesome, super helpful.
So if someone listening to this is thinking, okay, I've dabbled in AI, but I really want to start rolling this out in my organization, how would you recommend they do that? I mean, there have to be some controls put in place, right? I mean, a lot of cities now are looking at AI policies, which I suppose AI could help you write. but if there's a city manager or an IT manager or someone at a city or county listening to this podcast, and they're thinking, okay, I really want to roll this out, but I want to be careful. I want to do it the right way. I want to make sure I'm avoiding pitfalls. What would you recommend?
Yeah, I would say the policy side, the first step I would do is I would say look at your existing policy landscape. Look at your computer use policies. Look at your data governance policies and assess whether or not you really need another policy. I think we get kind of policy happy in local government, and we have probably too many policies at times. And so just see if that already covers it. If it doesn't cover it, then assess, okay, do I need a whole new policy, or do I just need to add a sentence or two to my existing policies that's already in place? And I think what you find for most of the time, your existing policy landscape already covers the usage of AI and data governance and data privacy and things like that. Mm-hmm. And you might want to add maybe a line or two to your data usage policy or your computer usage policy that's already existence.
And what kind of things do those policies protect against? I mean, I know it's kind of open source, and so you have to be careful what information you plug in because it's then going to be out there in the world, right? So you want to be careful not to put in sensitive information or classified information. But beyond that, are there any things that people need to watch out for?
I think the thing people need to watch out for the most is on the procurement side of AI. And what type of enterprises we're allowing to come and touch our network and touch our data. In my understanding, the biggest risk to AI is not staff putting in a budget a year early, because by the time that budget is leaked and they figure out all the ones and twos that tie it back to that city, the likelihood is that's already probably publicly available information already, right? The real danger is on software companies, especially some of these fly-by-night companies that are popping up because AI is popular. They have some really handsome or good-looking salespeople that are convincing, and then what happens to your data and what happens to your ownership of your data and things like that. That to me is way more dangerous for a local government than Billy Bob in finance accidentally putting putting a GL number in there. No, don't do that, please, Billy Bob. I would ask that you not do that and have good common sense. And the same thing you wouldn't put that into Google, right? So kind of the same processes already exist. That's why I'm saying that the existing policy landscape probably already covers 90% of what we have with ChatGPT or other AI tools like it.
So for again, city managers, or maybe it's someone in HR or someone in IT who really wants to roll out AI throughout the organization, what steps would you recommend that they take? I mean, are there trainings, are there consultants they should bring in, or is it as simply as getting everyone together in each department saying, okay, listen, start experimenting with this, start driving the car. Let's see how we can apply this internally. How can cities approach implementing AI in their organizations?
Yeah, I think it really starts the conversation of why. Why do you want to implement AI? What is your motivation for doing this? And what are we looking to accomplish with that? And I think that's going to provide you some guardrails. That way you're not going to vendors or going to directions that doesn't make sense for your city. So asking the why question, what is your, and lining that up with your strategic goals, lining that up with your general plan, lining up with the strategic direction your organization is going, and then layering AI as a tool into that. And as you layer AI in, asking, okay, what is it like? What does it feel like to use this AI tool? Are we losing any of our human touch? Are we losing our ability to interact with residents in meaningful ways? I see this a lot with things like, automating different front desk processes. Well, is that something we really want to do? Or is this important for our community to have these different touch points with our local residents, right? When someone comes in and applies, if you have business permits, for example, in your city, someone applies for a business permit, do we want that automated? Some people are going to say yes, which is totally fine. And some people might say, you know what? No, I like having that conversation. That way I know the new business and who the entrepreneurs are in my community. I think it's important to have those touch points. So it just depends on what your goal and your objectives are for using AI, and then using AI not just to chase efficiency or to chase productivity, because who knows what that actually means, but things that are actually able to move the needle forward for your strategic vision that you have.
Ironically, in some ways, it can make an organization more human. I've seen quite a few people that I know that I work with use it to help with emails, and they draft an email that say, okay, review this for clarity and conciseness. That's one of the great prompts that that's out there. But also, give it a softer tone. Right?
Yes.
I feel like I was kind of a jerk here. Make it nicer.
Right? Yes. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And those are great examples of just being more human at work. Again, bringing your full human intelligence to work every day. I created it's on our website, a practical framework for implementing AI to kind of walk cities. It's not going to tell you exactly what to do, but just here's how to walk through implementing AI in the local government. Here's what this could look like. Here's how to the checklist to look through and to determine whether or not we really are AI ready and are actually AI forward in our processes and things like that.
Where can people find that? Is that at civicinnovation.ai?
Correct. Yep. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now let's talk about that a little bit, because you started kind of was it a YouTube training series? You've put out quite a bit of content on helping people understand how to use AI.
Yeah, I hope it's helpful for sure. And my goal is just I really believe that AI training is really important, right? And so I would say if you're a city leader, you need to get your people trained on how to use AI. And I don't care if it's my course. I don't care if it's some other person's course. Whoever it is, go find some kind of training. That way you know how to appropriately and effectively use these tools. Just like we're not just going to throw a 16-year-old in the car and say, good luck, kid. We're going to want to have some training first before they get on the road, because there are inherent dangers to it. But there's also huge benefits to having your 16-year-old know how to drive. It's a great thing for your family. At least I hope so. When my kid turned 16. Still hoping for driverless cars by that point. Hopefully that's all said and done. We can avoid a lot of headache by that point. But there's great benefits for it, and so having training is really important. I have a course on that civicinnovation.ai website as well, and then I do YouTube videos of just different AI tools that are out there and how to practically use these tools in a local government context.
If someone wants to really dive in, tell me a little bit about your course. Is it a paid course, and how does it work?
Yeah, so it is a paid course. We charge $300 for the 8+ hour course, and then if you're a local city that wants to send 5 or more people, we do discounts for bulk orders like that. And it basically walks people through from knowing nothing about AI to learning how to create graphs, learning how to create budgets, learn how to analyze data, create policy documents, and things like that, and going from zero to hero in about an 8.5 hour window period.
Micah, your book contains 1,001 prompts. Maybe give me some examples of some of your favorites.
My favorite, I like that clarity and conciseness one because I'm not very clear and concise at times. One of my favorite prompts to use, Chris, is this. It says, I don't know how to prompt this. I want to do something like such and such. Can you please help me create a prompt for this?
I love it.
Because sometimes we all get writer's block or things like that. And I think one of the best teachers of AI is, or of prompting, is AI. So, and in fact, Chris, if you don't mind, I just developed an app that helps people analyze their prompts, and then they can put a prompt in there. It'll give them instant feedback on what they can do to improve the prompt. You can click a button, and it automatically takes in those improvements, and then you can kind of become a prompt master. And so I have this app. I have 50 seats available for it. And so for anyone listening to the Gov360 podcast, if they want to get a free test out a free app of learning how to prompt, reach out to me and just mention the Gov360 podcast, and I'll get you that app.
Fantastic. How should people reach out to you?
They can reach out to me through my email or on LinkedIn. My email is my first and last name at outlook.com.
And then, we're also going to put links in the show notes and the YouTube description for the civicinnovation.ai website for your book, and then your YouTube series. And then also, let's talk a little bit about AAME, because you're the chief operating officer of AAME. I'm a founding member of AAME. Full disclosure, I'm a big believer in what that organization is doing. But AAME is coming up on a year anniversary here. Have we hit a year yet?
Wow, I think we're close.
Yeah,
I think we're close. It's hard to tell because Joe and I have been talking about AAME for a long time. So it's like, okay, when did it officially launch versus when did the conversations about launching happen before that too at times?
So, for those who are not familiar, there are a number of organizations out there for local government professionals. And when you get to the city manager level, the most well-known organization is ICMA, the International City County Management Association. And then each state has the state chapter of ICMA, but then also sometimes there are statewide organizations that support city managers. Here in California, we have the California City Management Foundation, CCMF, and they do some great work. But Micah, you and Joe and the others who have worked so hard on AME really identified a need in the profession, which is for a national organization that really represents and supports the city manager. ICMA will be the first to tell you that their job is to support and protect the profession itself, not the individual city managers. And so, there was really a need for an organization that would look out for city managers and have the backs of city managers. And I'm very excited about the groundwork that's been laid there and the potential for AAME. How did the idea come about, and how did you get involved?
Well, the idea really comes from Joe, right? Joe is an incredible individual who just has a heart for city managers and a heart for building a network of city managers to support one another. And I believe in that vision too. And so I was happy to join on with Joe and Brandon and join the team there to launch AAME a year ago. And really just came from a heart of wanting to support city managers, of knowing how lonely and isolating this profession can be, and knowing the value, right? We've all been to those city manager conferences and find the value of being able to talk to other city managers who are going through similar things and having, in a way, having a shoulder to cry on at times, and also having the ability to have someone speak into your life about, okay, all right, it's not going to be that bad. We've also been through stuff like this before, and having that anchor could be super helpful and super important. And we just wanted to create a network where that continues to happen, where we can continue to develop as professionals. We can continue to have resources we can lean on, everything from start to finish, right? Joe's really big on contracts and has done a lot of great work on contracts about, okay, if you're a first-time city manager, what should your contract look like? I can tell you it should not look like mine. That's definitely what not to use as my first contract. Don't use that one. It was probably a really bad one. but that's before I knew Joe, so I didn't know any better. But we've all learned over the years. We've learned from the battles we've faced and things that we've done, and we kind of learned when to engage and when not to engage. And for young aspiring city managers, that can be really helpful to know ahead of time and avoid some heartache.
Yeah, I think so often city managers have come up through an organization or multiple organizations in a particular department. They have a particular background and maybe very proficient in the technical aspects of the job. I really want to encourage city managers, and not just city managers, but everyone in the local government profession, to become an expert in your profession, right? Yeah. Study the profession itself, and organizations like AAME are huge for this. One of my sick hobbies is that I collect city manager contracts. Right. Whenever there's anyone in the region that just starts a city manager's job, I pull their contract. I keep a copy of it. I look at it. I see, is there anything in there that I've never seen before in a contract? Is there, and I kind of keep personally just kind of an ideal contract template. Being engaged in that way, keeping up with and learning everything you can about the profession itself is so important. And AME is going to, be hugely helpful in that regard.
I wholeheartedly agree there. I would, if you want to try something out, it's kind of fun, use deep research and have deep research find city manager contracts and then have it develop a template for you for the ideal city manager template. I'm curious as to, from your experience in it, just kind of see what ChatGPT comes up with and see what they have.
I like that. Yes. Now, would you recommend ChatGPT or Grok in that instance?
Grok is free, so why not both?
Yeah,
do both. Yeah, compare and contrast. See which one gives you the better one.
So you mentioned that Grok will come up with many more sources to cite, right? Once it comes up with the sources, could you then transfer those over to ChatGPT to produce more content?
You might be able to. I've never tried that before. That'd be interesting to try.
Because you mentioned that Grok is great for coming up with sources, but maybe ChatGPT is better for creating more content. I wonder if there's a way to combine those two things.
Could be, yeah. It'd be interesting. That'd be interesting to try out. Yeah, I've never tried that before.
Yeah.
It'd be fun.
Interesting. Well, if you're listening to this episode, I highly recommend that you get the book, 1001 Prompts, Unlocking Generative AI in Local Government. Real nuts and bolts stuff here, which is, important. I'm really drawn to nuts and bolts as opposed to just theory and philosophy, right? So this is something that you can order today on Amazon. We'll put that link in the show notes and the YouTube description. And in a couple of days, you can be writing prompts that are going to make your life a lot easier in your profession. And then, again, we'll put links to the civicinnovation.ai and the YouTube series. Micah, thank you so much for being here today, for sharing your expertise and your practical insights. Your work is really helping local government professionals across the country lead with confidence and innovation. And really appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Chris. My pleasure. And appreciate this podcast and the work you're doing to educate and to bring to light the profession of local government, how vital it is for our world today.
I appreciate that. And thank you, everyone who's watching and listening, for joining us for this conversation on unlocking the power of AI in local government. If you found value in today's episode, be sure to subscribe and share it with a colleague. And if you're ready to explore AI in your own agency, check out the resources linked in the show notes or in the YouTube description. Gov360 is still just getting started, but at the same time, I'm just getting started managing a new city, so we'll be moving to a bi-weekly episode schedule. Look for the next episode of Gov360 to drop in 2 weeks. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We're on all the major podcast platforms, and subscribe on YouTube for video of each episode and for show clips. Also, subscribe to the Gov360 newsletter on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is where we can all connect and continue the conversation. Thank you for joining us on Gov360. Until next time, govern boldly, my friends.